Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Deserts of Plenty. This is a podcast about making our way in this crazy world. In a world where we are inundated with calories, but we are lacking in nutrition. We are awash in information, but lacking in knowledge. We are awash in experiences, but lacking in connection. And that's what Deserts of Plenty is all about. There's all this stuff out there, but nobody's happy or fulfilled or healthy. There's a lot going on. So that it's about that. It's also about our 3 pillars of health, mental, physical, and spiritual. And finally, it's about understanding human interaction and transaction. Why do people often act against their own best interests? Which is a question that plagued me for some time and now seems so obvious that I'm almost embarrassed that I used to think about that. Just as a sidebar, it's interesting to check in with the person you are today and compare this person to the person you were a year ago. What do you believe now or do now that you didn't a year ago? And how does that make you feel about yourself? And when you think about that, then I like to think about, well, where will I be a year from now? What will I be doing a year from now that I don't even know is a thing? For myself, I often am agog at how different I am now versus a year ago. And I see that person just a year ago as, I don't know. I just feel like I wish I'd known that, a year ago. It's just a year anyway. So much changes so quickly as things change. Anyway, today I wanted to talk about a concept that is discussed in a book by Nassim Nicholas Taleb called Antifragility. That's the book, and I recommend it. And I'm going to summarize a bit of it and talk about what this is, antifragility, why it's important, and how we can adapt that into our everyday lives in order to become more resilient or robust. So, antifragility, what is it? Well, the word fragile in English, we have no word that means the opposite of that. Fragile is something, the more you mess with it, the easier it will break, like crystal, wine glasses. And of course, if you're like me, you think, well, of course there's robust or resilient. These are opposites, antonyms to the word fragile, but they're not really. I mean, of course, things that are robust or resilient resist breaking, but to be the exact opposite of fragile, which Nassim Nicholas Taleb talks about in his book Antifragility, is the more you mess with it, the stronger it will become. And it's interesting because it's a concept that is familiar to us in a couple of ways, and in 3 ways that I'll highlight. The first is in mythology, there's the myth of the Hydra. And the Hydra is a creature that when you attack it and cut off one of its heads, 2 grow back in its place. So the more you mess with it, the stronger the creature becomes because it grows an extra head. In forestry management, the people who run forestry management realize that you have to have controlled burns. You have to let certain amounts of forest fires run, because if you don't, if you take away the anti-fragility of the system, then eventually what you're going to have is some huge, massive fire that's going to be way, way worse than the sum of all the smaller ones that would have happened in the interim. This happens with antibiotic resistance. If you have an infection or one has an infection and antibiotics are given out quite readily, it may come at the expense of individual bacteria, but the colony as a whole will get stronger once it adapts a resistance to that certain antibiotic. Then you've got to go get more antibiotics. So the culture itself is getting stronger as we attack it and mess with it. And that's antifragility. And even for ourselves, we know this when we talk about exercise. Exercise is a way that we put controlled stress on our body through running or lifting weights or whatever way you choose to do that. And as a result, our bodies get stronger. So the stress, the damage, the short-term damage, if you like, that we do to muscles when you lift weights, the muscles then rebound and get stronger. And, we know that, like, if you were to have absolute comfort and just lie in a bed for a year, uh, your muscles would completely atrophy. You would have no resilience. Even getting up to get a glass of water would exhaust you. So, in the sort of the parlance that is used in the book, uh, for fragile systems and robust systems, it's like use it and lose it. Even a leather jacket, which is super tough, if you use it long enough, it will wear out. Whereas with living systems, or certain systems that are anti-fragile, it's use it or lose it, right? Use it and lose it, fragile, use it or lose it, anti-fragile. So that's a way in which human beings have this anti-fragile system. The more you mess with it, the stronger it becomes. Another example is the restaurant industry. Restaurants individually are very fragile, especially when they get started. A lot of them fail within their first year. But because of that fragility of individuals, the restaurant industry as a whole becomes very robust and, well, anti-fragile. It's like, there's no shortage of restaurants. I mean, I live in Toronto. There's no shortage of restaurants. And so the anti-fragility of the system comes at the expense of the fragility of individual members within it. Anyway, so that's anti-fragility in a kind of a nutshell. And so it really comes down to when you, in certain systems or situations, if you provide a stressor, and this is a stress that is acute, so short term, and it's controlled. I choose to do it. Those seem to have long-term benefits. That's in contrast to like chronic long-term stress that will raise your cortisol levels and will damage, especially human beings. People living with chronic stress run into certainly varying problems with their health. So lifting weights is one way we can stress our bodies and have a positive effect in the, short-term stress, long-term benefit. Well, what else? How else can we stress our bodies? And unless you've been living under a rock, you certainly heard of a couple more things that people are doing quite regularly and readily, and they're hot topics right now. And one is fasting or time-restricted feeding. They're basically the same thing, although like they are used in different ways. Time-restricted feeding is more about the getting all your calories within a certain window of the day. Most people in North America and Europe eat up to 16 hours a day. From the moment they wake up, they grab some food and they're eating until they go to bed. And so their only fasting windows when they're asleep. So time restricted feeding lessens that window. Maybe you skip breakfast, or maybe you stop eating by 6 o'clock at night or whatever. And people try to get, think about 16-8 is a very popular, it's not 16-8. 16-8. Yeah, 16-8. Yeah, sorry. 16 hours of fasting, 8 hours of eating. So your window of eating is between, say, 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night. And then outside those times, you don't eat. And then fasting generally refers to, it's interchangeable because they're all the same. But when I think of fasting, I think of more than 24 hours. Myself, personally, I do 2, what they're called monk fasts a week, and that's 36 hours I don't eat. So every Saturday, I go to bed, I don't eat it all Sunday, and then I have lunch on Monday. And that generally is between 30 to 36 hours, depending on how late I eat on Saturday night. And this has a range of benefits. It does a lot of things, like it increases your body's sensitivity to insulin, which is very good, especially if you are flirting with type 2 diabetes. But even that, insulin resistance is now tied to so many diseases, everything from heart disease to dementia to leaky gut to dyslipidemia to all these different aspects of our health. And so the short-term stressing of fasting, which mimics the way we were, 10,000, 20,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, and we still have the same biology that we did, 30, 40, 50,000 years ago, that is beneficial. So short-term stress, long-term result. Another stressor that people are having daily in their lives or regularly in their lives is cold therapy and heat therapy. I take cold showers almost every morning, 6 days a week. I have a cold shower. And I'll tell you, I get in and I have a hot shower for a while. And then as my hand reaches for that cold lever, My brain is screaming, don't do it. My body is screaming, don't do it. But I do it. And in the short term, I hate it, especially the first 10, 15 seconds. I hate it. It's also no fun to be fasting. It's been 18 hours since I've eaten, and then I go buy like a Kentucky Fried Chicken and I smell that fat, and I'm like, oh, I don't want that, but I want food. They're tough. And the gym, it's not always easy to like make it to the gym, and spend the 2 hour investment. Well, I've got so much to do, or I'm tired, I don't want to go. Can I just have a day off? But fighting through that mental block, whether it's going to the gym, fasting, or cold therapy, has a benefit to it that I did not anticipate. It's again, in this world where we live, where you can have any experience that you want. Basically, it's just a phone call, a click away to, shirk off your responsibilities, and whether you have money or not, you can do basically whatever you want in the short term. But to fight against that temptation to give into what's easy and do things not because they're easy, but because they're difficult, to quote JFK, and I don't like going JFK, but there it is. To do these things because they are difficult. And in the short term, they are tough. And mentally, it takes a will to overcome the blocks that your instinct or underlying subconscious puts in the way. You're like, no, I'm going to do these anyway. And now as a result, I feel much more mentally tough and mentally resilient. And in the way that I came through the pandemic, thinking like, well, I survived that experience. And other than like my own mortality or the health and mortality of those that I love, what experience am I going to face that's going to be that tough? And I feel now somewhat battle tested, resilient. And I feel even more resilient as a result of doing these things. And a new thing that I've just started doing is morning words, which is, writing 3 pages a day longhand in a journal, not for review, but just as a mental mind dump. And again, I hate doing it. I'm like, 3 pages. I don't know what to write. I just woke up. But you just start writing and you just push through and you just write stream of consciousness. And then again, when you're done, it's like, I feel good. Like I've never fasted, gone to the gym, done cold water therapy. And when I was done, went, boy, I wish I hadn't done that. The way I do after I do things that are easy, stay up late watching Netflix, have a little bit too much to drink, have that extra piece of pie or whatever. Oh man, I wish I had not done that. In this world that we live in, comfort is really killing us. Comfort and ease. And with my daughter, she's now 9. And when she has problems or conflicts, I feel like now I am giving her the opportunity, I'm giving her the gift of letting her solve it herself, to let her build up resilience. Every morning she says to me, not every morning, but anytime she does say to me, Daddy, I don't want to go to school. I'm like, I know, I get it. And, it's a short term right now. It's like, it's loud. It's, I'd rather sit here and play and watch things. And I tell her, well, we do these things because they are tough, because they are going to, in the long run, benefit you in ways you cannot yet understand. And she understands that. Even at 9 years old, she gets it. And she trudges to school and she comes home and she never says to me, Daddy, you know what? I wish I didn't go to school today. She never says that to me. Not once has she said, she'll say, I don't want to go. But when she comes home, she's never like, Dad, I wish that didn't happen. She has learned mental toughness. And that's what stressing, leaning into these things that you do not want to do. In Stoic philosophy, there's a saying, the obstacle is the way. And I'm becoming to become, learn to speak, Ralph. I am becoming much more convinced that that is true. That if you find something in your life that is like, I don't like it. I want to lean into it and see what's there. What's that about? Where's that resistance coming from? Where's that uncomfortableness existing from? Anyway, I should say at the very end of this that I don't give advice. So I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and start fasting. But I'm encouraging you, if you are interested, to go out and do it safely. Ask your doctor, find ways to do it safely. Because all these things, it's like going to the gym. Like if you don't work out, sedentary, and then New Year's comes and you're like, oh, I'm going to go jog 10 kilometers, you're probably going to have a lot of problems, and it can be very damaging to you, especially given your level of fitness. So whether it's anything that I say here, and you're like, oh, I think I want to try that. Do it safely. There's lots of resources out there. I'm not an expert in any of these things. I do them and I love them, and I would encourage anybody to go out and do these things, or at least investigate it. It's like reading. Like, I would of course encourage anyone to go out and start reading. Reading is a way of talking to smart dead people, as someone said, and I like that quote. But what it gives you internally is just, it's hard to overstate. There's, in our world, pleasure has been confounded with happiness, or confounded has been compared to as the same thing. And that's so corporations can sell us crap, right? And it's not. Pleasure is not the same as happiness. And in fact, pleasure, if you have only pleasure, your happiness will go down. And there's a physiological reason that happens, which I'm not going to go into today, but it is very interesting. But doing things that are tough in the moment is tough, but in the long run will benefit you. And that is a kind of a truism that I have come to understand, that the things that are easy in the short term will come to mess you up in the long term. And we know that, right? Eating too much sugar, taking too much alcohol, smoking cigarettes, these things that are pleasurable in the moment, in the long run are going to be at your detriment. And the exact opposite is also true. The things that are tough in this moment, going to the gym, fasting, cold water therapy, leaning into my problems, trying to, doing deep dives into ourselves and asking ourselves who we are, what do we really want. Those things are tough in the short term, but in the long term, will have surprising benefits. Same thing with relationships and the people in your lives. Anyway, that's it for today. Antifragility is a concept that I encourage you to look into if this is at all interesting to you. Please send me your questions and feedback. I'm really curious as to your journey and what's going on with you, because I'm just amazed more and more. I keep finding myself in places I never thought I would be. If you told me a year ago I would be fasting right now, I'd say, you're insane. And yet here I am, and I can't ever imagine a time when I won't be. Anyway, have a great week. We'll see you all again. Take care. Bye.